at growing MSMEs in Nigeria. Why is this important? And I have the pleasure of introducing my first guest, Abubakar Suleiman, who is the Managing Director and the Chief Executive Officer at Sterling Bank PLC. He's joining me right now from Lagos. Hello, Mr. Suleiman, and thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Thank you for having me, Nancy. Thank you.
Good morning to you, and welcome to the program. We're talking growing MSMEs in Nigeria, and it is very instructive at this time and very important. And let me also tell our viewers that we're expecting the DG of SMEDAN to join us any moment from now. He's supposed to be on his way here, but let's see what happens. If not, he would also join us virtually, and once we get him, I'll put him on the call. Okay, MD, let me start by saying we're seeing MSMEs grow in Nigeria. And my concern is that we have more nano enterprises than even micro in Nigeria, according to the NBS. And many of the MSMEs or many of the nano and micro businesses we have in Nigeria are perhaps businesses that came in as a result of hustling. Let me put it that way, and we don't see them structured. Are you by any means worried by this? Let's start with that premise.
Well, thank you for having me, Nancy, and thanks for pointing out what has been one of the most challenging things in growing the Nigerian economy. If you look at most advanced and growing economy, they have a very significant medium-sized businesses that are structured and are therefore able to take advantage of opportunities. And we don't have that. And there are many reasons for that, including the fact that we haven't necessarily provided financing to small businesses the way we should. But people always imagine that when you say financing, you are talking about loans from bank. But the truth is that many of those businesses are starting with a very low level of capital, and in some cases with a very low level of, I would say, managerial experience. And that means that they are stuck in that space. In addition to that, we also seem to run businesses that generate just sufficient profit for the entrepreneurs to survive, but not enough for them to reinvest in the business and grow the business. And so I'm worried, like yourselves, and it's one of the primary reasons we are working with SMEDAN, because the first step towards solving any problem is to have the data, is to have data that you can work with, data that tells you the story that you can't just make up as you go along. And so we have signed an MOU with SMEDAN. We will be working with them to ensure that we'll build a very robust database for all the SMEs in Nigeria. And on the back of that database, we can then begin to intervene strategically. Otherwise, we are merely just going at the problem without knowing exactly where the right levers to pull.
If we take a look at your partnership with SMEDAN, what kind of structure is it? Because when I was reading through it, I saw a loan. And why are you doing it with SMEDAN at this time? I also know that there's been SMEDAN for many years. And my interactions with the previous DGs of SMEDAN, and I hope to take it with this new DG of SMEDAN, is that SMEDAN always comes to us and comes to businesses that, oh, we are going to provide technical expertise. Many Nigerian small businesses in Nigeria would think that when they go to SMEDAN, they are going to have opportunities to get financing for their businesses and all of that. So why are you doing it with SMEDAN and now? And is funding MSMEs also profitable and bankable for banks? Because it seems that Nigerian banks, of course, you are big. You'd have to fall in tier 1, tier 2, or perhaps tier 3. Then we have the MFBs, microfinance banks, which the CBN has also established that model to cater to these category of businesses. But how profitable is it and bankable is it for this kind of a partnership with SMEDAN for MSMEs, having in mind that small businesses fail within 5 years of their existence? I don't know if that is within...
Well, that's a lot of questions there, but let me see if I can go around it. We did have a relationship with SMEDAN before now. What we are doing is, with the appointment of the new DG, we've found room to really, really scale that relationship. We're refining what we had already started. So we've always known that SMEDAN is a critical agency that have the capacity to help solve problems. It is the most representative organization when it comes to small businesses, and therefore is in the best position to understand their problem. Yes, we do know that SMEDAN does not have the capacity to do everything. So, for instance, people expect SMEDAN to be the financing agency. It's not what it's set up to do. At some instances, it's able to help organize financing, but the best thing SMEDAN can do is to work with institutions like ourselves to create the solution, because they have the ears of the small businesses, and therefore they can have a sit down with us and we'll create solutions that will work. Um, do I think that financing small businesses is profitable? I think sometimes you have to decide the balance, because the most profitable things to do might not be the most sustainable thing. It might also not be the most impactful thing. So, as an institution, you have to find the right level of profit. That means that you're able to deliver return to your shareholders, but at the same time, you are doing something that is equally important. For instance, like enabling small businesses. My argument has always been that if I can participate in growing the ecosystem of small businesses, even if the initial financing is not as profitable as it could be, because it will trigger economic growth, there are so many layers of benefit that I can benefit, either because I'm banking other organizations that are profiting from the relationship with the SMEs, or some of the SMEs would actually grow to become large commercial enterprises that I can then work with. So it can be profitable, but you have to have a perspective that your job is not to make the most profit in the shortest period of time. If you have that perspective, then you can invest and hope that the relationship will then evolve into a much more profitable long-term relationship.
Mm. So I would like you to speak about the loan, how many MSMEs are being targeted. I don't know if my team, are we ready with the DG of SMEDAN so that we can get at least his opinion on this before I come back to the MD of Sterling Bank. Is the DG SMEDAN with us right now? Okay, okay. MD, let me continue with you while I get feedback from okay, the DG is there. DG, good morning and welcome. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Mr. Abubakar.
Okay,
Thank
DG,
you for partnering.
DG, you were supposed to be with me live in the studio here, but thank God for technology too, and you're able to connect from where you are. I don't know how much you heard from the earlier conversation with the MD of Sterling Bank, and I did ask why this partnership right now, perhaps with the new leadership at SMEDAN, and congrats to you, Charles, for this appointment. Now, let me speak. I want to get your sense regarding the partnership with Sterling Bank and what Nigerian businesses hope to derive for our viewers today and for small businesses listening, small business owners listening to us right now. What do they hope to achieve from this partnership? How should they go about it? DG SMEDAN?
Thank you. Thank you again, Nancy, and I promise I'm going to be with you another time. The partnership with Sterling, I think, they said the best time to plant a tree um, is now. The next best time, the first best time was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. I think that this partnership has come at a very, very right time, because if you take a panoramic sweep of those asking small businesses across the country what exactly their pain points are, I can tell you 9 out of 10 small businesses will tell you that their number one problem is access to finance. And what we're doing with this partnership is trying to democratize this access to finance for these small businesses. And then we're doing this in partnership with Sterling Bank. And I can't thank the managing director of Sterling Bank enough for even seeing the vision, trying to go with us on this journey to try and reduce, to democratize this access. So what we're doing is making funding available for small businesses at a single-digit interest rate. And when we're doing this, because we understand that capital in Nigeria is very expensive, and capital in Nigeria is also very scarce. And because of this understanding, we've got a good partner like Sterling Bank to work through having to structure a facility of from 500,000 to 2.5 billion for small businesses. If we get 10,000 small businesses that access this funding at 500,000, we'll be able to, at the end of this month portfolio, look at 10,000 businesses that have a ripple effect of galvanizing the economy and multiplying, helping with job creation and just the ripple effect of multiplying and galvanizing the spheres of contact. By so doing, what we can expect to see is a high rate of unemployment reducing, and many more people getting more involved with economic activities across the country. So I think if we get 10,000 small businesses to access this $5 billion loan at a single-digit interest rate, I think we started to do something phenomenal in the lives of small businesses across Nigeria.
What will be the modalities for businesses that are watching right now to engage and to have access to these funds? Because it's also my duty here as a business program, as a program that is an intermediary for financial literacy, talking about economic policies, investment and markets, to bring this to our audience today. So how would people watching now, what should they do?
So what they can do right now is go on our website, www.smedan.gov.ng/sterling. SMEDAN sterling. What they can do is give us that details. One of the things that we want to do is, with this loan, we want to begin to track almost immediately how many people access this. And I was speaking with some stakeholders last week. What I was saying to them was, on a month-in-month-out basis, we're going to be publishing data of the small businesses that access this loan. Because if you look at the statistics from the Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria, it shows that only 4% of the 40 million small businesses across Nigeria have access to credit. What we want to do is, help to change that statistic drastically. So real time, we're going to be tracking. All they need to do right now is give us the information on our website. We're creating a wait list, and as soon as next week, they can start to access this funding. And this funding is available across different sectors, from the smallholder farmers to the retailers to the creative entrepreneurs. Many more sectors will be unlocked, but all they can do is get access to this funding at this single-digit interest rate, and we think that they can help to drastically change their businesses in terms of working capital, in terms of equipment procurement, and in terms of workspaces.
Now, MD Sterling, DG SMEDAN has said single interest rates is less than 10%, at least with my own understanding. So, MD Sterling, what exactly is the interest rate? What is the payback time? How much is the least and how much is the maximum, if there's if there are things like that? And I would also like to know, what MSMEs are both of you targeting? Because if we're talking about small businesses, we have different sectors. So what businesses are you targeting, the timeline and the interest rates? Less than 10%, but what exactly is it?
Thank you. To fully understand what we are trying to do, we need to step back and look at what the central bank has attempted to do over the years. They had significant intervention facilities, but by their very nature, intervention are temporary. It was meant to trigger some level of growth, to unlock some value, to solve some problem. But commercial financing is supposed to eventually, come in to take over that space. And as you've said, the central bank intends to focus on its primary mandate over the next couple of years. What we must then do as financial institutions is to bring in intermediary solutions like this single-digit financing that would allow these institutions to continue, so that we don't see any dip in productivity as a result of lack of financing for SMEs. So that's what we're doing here, bringing this financing. Think of it as trainer wheels. We come in, it is a single digit, which means it's likely to be anywhere between 9 and 9.9%. But what
Andy,
it does
that's
is
still high. I was thinking you tell me 5% or 6%.
Well,
that's why I actually asked that question, because single digit can be deceptive.
Something tells me that you know what the inflation figure is today. I may be wrong.
27%.
I also suspect you know what the treasury bills rates are today. So when you create solutions that are not anchored in reality, they will never scale, they will never be sustained. So as much as possible, we must anchor our solutions in practical reality. And that's why the funding cannot be that far off from where inflation numbers or rates are. But the intention is to enable these businesses become more productive. So it's not just the funding we give them. We hope to provide those who are looking for other kinds of support, like training, like partnership, like access to market. So we're able to help them grow their business so that they actually become more profitable. Our original target would always be our core. As you know, Sterling Bank's core is the heart sector, which is healthcare, education, agriculture, renewable energy, and transport. We would always cater to that sector wherever we lend. But there are other exciting sectors that requires financing now. Trading is one of them. The DG has mentioned the creative industry. We are also trying to figure out how best to lend to the creative industry. The key is that we focus on the customers, which is the SMEs and what their needs are. And there are very few instances where we'll not be able to adapt to their need. In terms of the details of the lending itself, we're looking at a 2-year tenor. We will have moratorium, but it will depend on the sector and the type of business. The amount itself is a function of also your requirement, your need as a business. But the cap, the maximum we'll give to any business from this particular fund is 2.5 million. And of course, our hope is that some of the businesses that access this funding may have other needs that are not covered within this fund, and will be able to attend to them using other commercial solutions. And so it's not just down to this funding. It is about, this is a trainer wheel. If you get onto this program, how do we work with you to solve all the other problems that is preventing you from scaling? Right. So, for instance, you have access to training where possible. You have access to partnership, and we'll introduce you to other people in your ecosystem. We'll introduce you to market. We'll promote you, so that it's down to, let's work with you. And if you're a competent and committed entrepreneur, we'll enable you move from being a micro business to a medium-sized business, and hopefully you'll be a large business at some point soon.
MD, let me still stick with you with just one question before I go to the DG. At the CIBN dinner last Friday, I don't know if you were there at the dinner, and let me take a cue from what Governor Cardoso said in paragraph 54 when he talked about CBN's catalytic role in the support of investment and private sector participation in the economy, improve access to finance for MSMEs, and enhance financial services for the unbanked. When he said this interview came to my mind. So it was as if, Cardoso was just really thinking in line with what I'm going to be doing today with you and the DG of SMEDAN. How do you think that the Apex Bank's role should be? In terms of, I don't want to say forcing you and your colleagues, because it seems that the central bank over the years has tried to force you and your colleagues to lend to the small businesses. It was not successful. It created a microfinance model. That's a topic for another day that I'll be delving into, the microfinance model and how we have seen how they have, if they have been successful at all. How do you think that banks moving forward should play in the MSME sector? That is one. The number two question is the talk around recapitalization by Cardoso over the weekend. How do you think that the posture would change the landscape? Because I guess now, as the CEO of Sterling Bank, since Friday, you may have been thinking, how do I up the capitalization of my bank? Because I wonder what that conversation will be with you and your colleagues from about 25 billion naira in 2005 to now. Of course, you talked about inflation. Inflation has eroded your capital base. Some of the biggest banks in Africa are operating over $100 billion. Nigeria's capital base for banks is still less than $100 million. So within all of this space, what should we expect? Because I'm looking at the conditions will be more tightened. So if you are doing this, I wonder what it will be, what the outlook will really be like for small businesses, because you guys will be thinking about big ticket transactions.
Well, I think the first point is that we don't need the regulator to tell us when we need additional capital. So many of us have actually been looking at the possibility of increasing our capital, because what the regulators have seen, we also ought to have seen, which is that to grow the economy, the moment the president announced that he was targeting a $1 trillion economy, we obviously know that the financing required for a $1 trillion economy is very different from what we have today. And therefore, that's something we should naturally have gravitated to. And for most of us, our capital absolute number is in excess of 100 billion. I mean, I'm close to 200 billion. There are people who are 3-4 times the capital that I have. So there is some capital in the sector, and not everyone is at 25 billion range. So there's that. But what is being said here is that when growth comes, right, when growth comes, then financing must also grow. And we expect that there will be a significant spot of growth with all of the reform going on. And that means additional capital. Now, as for the SME themselves, the more capitals that banks have, the more they have to lend to be able to get return, right? So the motivation to lend is going to be even stronger as you raise capital. The reason it's been difficult to get funding to SME, there are a couple of them. The first one is that the SMEs are not properly structured. And when you are not properly structured, the cost of lending to you is very high because everything is manual. Every process is human. And so it's very expensive and it becomes almost unprofitable when you've gone through the process. The MOU that SMEDAN has signed with us is one of the major things we hope to accomplish, is to start with a very robust database that tells you where the SME is operating, how long they have been operating, what is the size of their operation, what is their turnover. All of this information start to build up. In which geography are there? Those are the things that make it possible for you to build digital lending system. And the single-digit financing that we are putting forward is actually going to be deployed digitally because we cannot afford, there's no way you can lend to 1 million, let alone 20 million SMEs by manual processes. Right. So to grow the SMEs and to make it possible for them to attract capital, we must digitize them. We must help formalize them. We must help them to have better bookkeeping. One of the solutions we are deploying when we register this SME is a platform that allows them to keep better records, the kind of records that will make it easy for anyone to lend to them. And because SMEDAN's approach now is to centralize all of this data, it means that there will be multiple suppliers of capital, from the MFBs that you've mentioned to the banks themselves and to alternative capital sources that can now lend to SMEs because the data is now authenticated, is verified, right? That data is a starting point for attracting capital. The second thing that must then happen, and everybody says this, is ease of doing business. SMEs struggle when the condition for operating is not conducive. And those conditions can be significantly improved by government. And it's not always federal government. Sometimes it's the local government. Improving the conditions for operating will help. The third thing that is also important is that a lot of people start businesses without any formal education on how to manage their business. We must continue to invest in educating SMEs so that they can build for growth, they can build for sustainability, they can begin to separate between merely running consistent transactions with a profit and building an operations with a sustainable margin. So it's not just about throwing capital at them, it's about working from the baseline and growing the ecosystem, making it robust. And I believe that SMEDAN under the new DG has demonstrated a serious commitment to unlocking that value by making the SMEs themselves bankable. Nobody should have to lean on anyone or threaten anyone to lend to a successful business. There should be sufficient motivation to lend because the businesses have a potential to do well. Let's get rid of this statistic that says 80% of SMEs will fail. We can change that. Let's just simply support the SMEs so that they are better at running the businesses that they have committed to run.
DG SMEDAN, you've heard what the MD Sterling Bank had said, so much to do when it comes to, organizing MSMEs. I don't know, he did talk about database, and I'm really, at this point, a bit confused, because I know there's a database, according to SMEDAN and MBS. There was a survey that was done by the MBS and SMEDAN in 2017 that came up with about 41.5 million MSMEs in Nigeria at the time. In 2022, we saw that 2 million, the number has been declined by 2 million as a result of COVID and all of that. So when the MD of Sterling is talking about database, I'm torn as to which data is it talking about, because there's an existing database by SMEDAN and MBS. Are you taking a look at another one? That's one question. The other part is the agenda. What actually is your thinking around SMEDAN? Because before you came in on this call, I did talk about, I've interviewed previous DGs of SMEDAN on this show. And the sense that I got at that time is that, we help businesses technically. But when Nigerian businesses hear about SMEDAN, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, their mind quickly goes to, okay, this agency will help me with access to capital and perhaps some kind of technical requirements. So what is your agenda now? And I know you've been involved in this space for a while, so I guess that your experience will also come to bear. But what exactly would be the coloration of SMEDAN at this time with you at the helm of affairs?
Thank you again, Nancy. I think My goal for SMEDAN right now is basically to run an agency that is not just paying lip service to the development of small businesses, but is the number one partner for small businesses across Nigeria. Now, you're not far from the truth when you say we lost a couple of small businesses. We lost a couple of small businesses, especially in Kaduna, in Port Harcourt, in Benue State, as a result of insecurity, as a result of um, government regulations, and of course, COVID. And one of the things that we're doing, thankfully, His Excellency the Vice President has committed to the launch of the National Council of SMEs, which will be done in a few days. What this does is that we are helping the small businesses by removing all the bottlenecks. So the National Council of Small Businesses is a one-stop shop for all the businesses that want to do business in Nigeria. And then that National Council now cascades to the states, where we have the State Council of SMEs chaired by the different governors. What a small business can do is walk into our secretariat at SMEDAN and almost immediately interact with our other government agencies from the NEPC, NIPC, CAC, SON, NAFDAC, and they can understand really what it takes for them to start, run, and scale their enterprises. Also, we will continue our small business clinics where we help small businesses to actually diagnose problems in their businesses, to remove the bottlenecks, to help to aid small business for growth. And we're doing this with our National Business Development Service Provider Program, where we're licensing small business development providers in the 774 local governments of Nigeria to help these small businesses with scale and growth. My focus right now is not very far from that of His Excellency the President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which is helping because we're not oblivious of the times that we're in. We understand that the cost of production has become very, very high, and so even the cost of finance, which is what we're trying to solve. So after this MOU with Sterling Bank, the 5 billion and the single digit interest rate, we're also looking at shared spaces, shared facilities, where a small business can walk into one of our facilities, obtain credits, capital for production, go into our service centers, produce their product, warehouse the product, and then also move the product from where it's been produced to anywhere around the country. And this is done at zero cost to the small business. What happens is that we're taking the cost of the equipment from them, we're taking the cost of maintenance from them, also helping them to democratize the cost, the access to finance. So it's a new day, if you ask me, for small businesses under the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria. Because all the 5 things that we're looking at is, one is access to finance, we're democratizing that. 2 is access to market, we're building different hubs, and we're helping these small businesses with the pre-lending and post-lending activities. Like you heard the MD of Sterling Bank say, we're not just giving them money, we're helping them with everything that will help them to access this money. And after they've accessed the money, I was talking about our monitoring and evaluation system, so much so that we are also hand-holding them to making sure that they are, 1, profitable, 2, they broaden the horizon. So we're helping them to democratize that access to market as well. But also we're very big on capacity development. We are training week in, week out, month in, month out for small businesses. And then we're connecting them with resources, we're connecting them with tools, we're connecting them with knowledge. And I'm just turning back to your first question on data. Yes, the data that exists at different parastatals. The PwC, for instance, released the data of 40 million. We released the data with the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. And what we want to do, and what I want to do almost immediately, is to conduct another small business census. So we're going to go into the length and breadth of Nigeria to find out the small businesses that exist. Where are these small businesses? What are they doing? What are they concerned with? What are the issues that they're facing? We're mapping them, geotagging them across the country so that we can make informed decisions. When we have that data, real-time data, we can then go to an organization like a computer manufacturer and say, listen, we've got small businesses in these clusters, and these are the problems that they're faced with, and this is the nature of the businesses. How about to give them this laptop, for instance, at this reduced price? and then we help that cluster to get access to those kind of equipment because we have informed data as a government to make this kind of informed decision. And that's what we're almost immediately starting to solve is this small business census. We're doing that as soon as next month. We're releasing the framework, and then I can almost immediately tell you that we'll be done in the next 3 months. In 90 days, we'll be done with that data, and then we can come to you again with this body of knowledge to help small businesses thrive, help small businesses scale, and then look at the small businesses in different clusters and see what we can do for them in their different clusters. And we already do some innovative things like something we adopted from the Japanese. The Japanese have something called One Village, One Product.
Yeah.
We have something, we renamed it we called it One Local Government, One Product. And what we're doing in all the 774 local government is to help work with cooperatives, help work with the clusters in the local government to help harness the raw materials in those local government for two reasons. Local production and also export. And if you look at the data that also exists, it shows that our export is very low. It shows that our manufacturing output is very low. And then with the small business census, we can start to address export and manufacturing data across the 774 local governments of Nigeria.
Okay, DG, you've given me an exclusive here, and I like that, the survey will soon start, a census, a small business census very soon, and that will take 90 days. So that's an exclusive here, at least something for my viewers to chew on and for us to monitor. MD, just before we go, I want to ask you this question around this partnership with SMEDAN. Is it going to be collateralized by small businesses? Because that is also one issue that small businesses talk about in terms of we don't have collaterals. If we have collaterals, we will not be at your banks seeking for loans. That's one, is it collateralized? Then number two, how are you working with credit bureaus as well as the National Collateral Registry, which I know was established to be able to bridge the gap talking about collateralization, where individuals or even small businesses can collateralize their loans with, if they have television sets, even their wristwatches and all of that. Are you working, you and SMEDAN, are you working with the National Collateral Registry on this, as well as credit bureaus to get the information of people you'll be giving the loans? The third leg of the question is, are you concerned about how the payback will be in terms of non-performing loans? Because when I took a look at the CBN's report on, I hope my brain doesn't fail me now, it will not, April 2023, yes, bank credits to private sector, I saw about 30 trillion naira. And NPLs from SMEs was about 1.3 trillion naira, and it grew from 2022 to that. So how do you want to bridge that gap? If you and SMEDAN are saying we're getting into a partnership of 5 billion naira, of course, not all small businesses will pay back. How do you edge? How do you guarantee yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Let me start by saying that the reason the data that exists, primarily from survey, has not been adequate for lending is that they were not collected with lending in mind. So the way someone would collect the data because they want to have a statistics of how many small business and how we as financial institutions will collect data, they're very different. And if we collect using the model that has financing in mind, then it's so much easier for financial institutions to lend money to small business. So this is different in that regard. The second aspect of it also is that what we are building is a live database, which means that it will be constantly updated and therefore accessible to those who are looking to collaborate with small businesses at all times. So that means that this is a different layer of data collection and data use. No, regarding your second question, we will not be asking for collateral at this time. And the reason is that we understand that small businesses have a deficit of equity. A lot of them have not started up with sufficient equity as to have money for collateral, right? So if we insist on collateral, then what we're doing is we're saying that only those who have inherited some money or those who have worked for a long time and saved money or have access to family money can run small business. And that doesn't have to be the case. There are a lot of very competent people who may not have capital, but who can run a very successful business. So we have not designed this to be collateral based. However, your comments around how we collaborate with the National Collateral Registry and the Credit Bureau, that is a very valid one. What is missing in that collaboration, again, is back to this database. Imagine you have a data that is so robust that you can integrate it directly with the registry, and therefore the issue of collateral becomes something that is so much easier to deal with, and over a shorter period of time because it's a digitally accessible collateral. So all of this is building to a system that makes it easier, cheaper, and faster for small businesses. Will the loans all perform? Absolutely not. We understand that we're in the business of banking. That is why we hold capital, so that where the loans don't perform, we have the capacity to absorb it. That is also why we charge an interest rate. And that's why when you're asking for 5%, the reality is that the historical non-performing ratio is in excess of 5%. So if you're lending at 5%, the portfolio itself is likely to be at zero return. And that is even without addressing your own cost of funds. So obviously some will not perform. But we understand that that is the business we're in, to take risk, to try and access and determine those who will perform, and hopefully to be, for our determination to be so accurate that the number of those who fail to perform fall below our tolerance level for bad credit, right? So we will do banking, and that means figuring out who will pay back, figuring out who is unlikely to pay back and denying those people. And where we're wrong, taking the cost of it. Of course, we would also try to rely on insurance. The product that we've built has some level of insurance built in as well. But at the end of the day, what will make this portfolio sound is data. Just this ability to really know the business, know how long they've been around, who they serve, where they work. And that is why the digital application is the way to handle this.
Okay.
And let's be clear about something. Each time people who are not real small business come into the small business space and take loans from bank and they fail to pay back, they are creating serious harm to the hardworking entrepreneurs who really need this capital, because then capital providers start to imagine that it's unsafe to lend to small business. In many cases, there are two types of people that create problem for access to finance in small business. Those who are not interested in small businesses, but they think access to finance, they will now use small business as a cover. And there are those who are not competent to run small businesses, and they've not taken the time to acquire the competencies required. And then they run a business that fail. We need to avoid putting capital to those two people and focus on giving capital to very competent people. And there are millions of them across this country running good businesses, and we have to support them.
Okay, I think I will leave it at that, because I'm tempted that we can continue this conversation for another 2 hours, but I need to leave it at that right now. MD, thank you very much for joining me on today's edition of the show. DG SMEDAN, you're going to be here physically with me very soon, so that we'll talk more about what SMEDAN, the new position and the new posture of SMEDAN right now, because that is also one agency I'm really interested in. If we have small businesses contributing about 98% to employment and it's 9% to jobs, I think that is very, very key to take a look at. So thank you to you both gentlemen for joining me on today's edition of the program.
Thank you for having us.
Now,
Thank you.